What's up, everybody? Bringing you back to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Let's continue. So, Ronda Rousey fights Holly Holm. She gets knocked out. Devastating knockout. And this is where things changed. Because it's so easy when you're on top. It's so easy when you're going through opponent after opponent after opponent, finishing them in devastating fashion, which is what Ronda was doing. But when you're at rock bottom, the mark of a true champion is how you respond from it. Guys like George St. Pierre, and I always point to George St. Pierre. I can point to plenty of cases outside of George St. Pierre. But I always refer to George St. Pierre as the greatest of all time. Nobody did it the way he's did it. Nobody had a better exit out of the sport than he did, not once but twice. And, especially the second time. You throw out the middleweight stuff, he beat fighters from 3 different generations, which nobody has ever done that. And Ronda was someone that I always admired for her career, but I always wondered how she would react in a defeat, because in victory she sure enjoyed it. There are moments where she didn't touch gloves, there are moments where she didn't shake hands, there were moments where she flipped fighters off. And I always thought, man, if she gets served some humble pie at some point in her career, how will she respond? That is how we will find out what Ronda Rousey is truly made of. And she gets knocked out in front of the entire world, and she disappeared. She disappeared for a year. The story is stuff of legend now. The fact that she rented a cabin for a while. She stayed at a cabin in some desolate area with, the woods and snow, and she ate a ton. She gained a lot of weight. She went AWOL pretty much after that loss to Holly Holm. And that's something that I'm not making fun of. I think that's sad. That's sad that, she had that tough of a time with a loss that she couldn't recover from it. She couldn't get back up on her feet. And this was something that I knew about her just as a personality trait dating back to her days as an Olympian. When she didn't win the gold in judo in Beijing, or I believe in Beijing, she lost. She finished with the bronze. That was her last go as a judo practitioner. That was her last go. After that, she thought, I need to find something else because my dream is ruined. I need to, move in another direction. She never faced her problems head on. She always moved to the next thing. And that next thing at that time was mixed martial arts. Now that she's having trouble, now that she had the devastating loss to Holly Holm, she goes into exile for a year. She goes on Ellen and she talks about how she wanted to kill herself. She goes on these shows and talks about all these things, about how she wants to, maybe come back, maybe not come back. She's at WrestleMania with The Rock. She's doing movies. She's doing all these things except taking a look at what made her what she was, and that was her UFC career. Her mixed martial arts career. She didn't switch camps, which is something I always, still to this very minute, will lobby and really wonder why she didn't do it. After her loss to Holly Holm, she stayed with Edmund Trevelyan and stayed at the Glendale Boxing Club, and that was that. She comes back after a year. Holly Holm fought Miesha Tate. The world expected Holly Holm and Ronda Rousey to rematch. That fight never happened, and it probably never will. Holly Holm and Ronda were set to rematch, but Ronda wasn't ready to come back. Holly fights Miesha. Miesha beats Holly, and then Ronda says, I got to get back to work. Miesha is waiting for Ronda. Ronda says, nope, I'm not ready yet. Then Miesha fights Amanda Nunes at UFC 200. Amanda Nunes destroyed Miesha Tate at UFC 200. And then Amanda Nunes I believe Amanda Nunes' first title defense was against Ronda. I'm not sure on that. But Amanda Nunes, nonetheless, takes on Ronda Rousey, and just, you want to talk about Holly Holm embarrassed her piece by piece, minute by minute, but Amanda Nunes blitzkrieged Ronda Rousey, and it was her first title defense, and she defeated her in 48 seconds. And that was in December of 2016. So here we are in February of 2018, and Ronda is joining the WWE. And let me say this, okay? And I have nothing against the WWE, I really don't. But this is the reality of the situation. The majority of the time, the two instances that we can look at in history, okay? Or maybe even three. I'll give you three instances. Ronda Rousey, Brock Lesnar, and Ken Shamrock. They all joined the WWE for the wrong reasons. Brock Lesnar joined the WWE for money. Ronda Rousey joined the WWE for fame. Ken Shamrock joined the WWE because his career in the UFC was spiraling, and they were offering him far more money at that time compared to what the UFC were paying or would have been paying him. The sport at that time was passing Ken Shamrock by. Imagine that. So what I mean by that is Ronda is in this current situation signed with the World Wrestling Entertainment based on the fact that she's doing this for all the wrong reasons. She's doing this to have a crowd cheer for her again. She's doing this to stay in the headlines. She's doing this to stay relevant. She's doing this because it's her only option. She's not willing to cut the camp out of her life. She wasn't willing to change camps. And earlier I referenced George St. Pierre. George St. Pierre was a champion. He had a huge fight in his first title defense where he was the biggest favorite of that time in a fight, in a UFC fight. The Vegas betting odds rated him as a 10-1 underdog, pretty much 8-1 underdog versus 8-1 favorite versus Matt Serra. Matt Serra knocked him out, but how did George St. Pierre respond? He evolved. He changed his game. He made himself more of an offensive wrestler style fighter rather than a Muay Thai guy, and went on to have the greatest run of dominance that we have ever seen as mixed martial arts fans. If Ronda had that trait of, well, I just lost, I need to get better, rather than saying, I just lost, I need to crawl in a hole and rent a cabin up in, Calgary, Alberta, Canada somewhere. I don't remember where it was, but it was in some snowy, Canada place. What good is that? And it's a shame, because I really think that her credentials, her ability, could still win her fights in the in the UFC. But she's not in this for the right reasons. She's in this for all the wrong ones. And I sent out some tweets last night, tweets that I'm not that proud of, but at the same time, I'm a little bit ashamed of her, because she could have been so much bigger, so much better than what she was. And the comeback attempt to fight Amanda Nunes was such a huge mistake that she should have fought a tune-up fight, then got a title shot, but the UFC wanted to cash in on her name, and that's what they did. And it didn't work out. I really don't think there'll ever be a point where she will ever look back on her MMA career positively. I don't. I think that she's negative. I think that she harps on the two negative moments of her career rather than looking at all the things that she accomplished, which were, no one has defended no female in UFC history has defended a title as many times as Ronda Rousey. Joanna Jędrzejczyk was close, but Rose Namajunas made sure that was not going to happen. Ronda Rousey still holds the record for female title defenses with 6 title defenses. Defended her title 6 times. You can say that the competition wasn't fully evolved yet. As I mentioned in part 1, the UFC women's bantamweight division alone is 5 years old. The UFC has added not 1, but 2, 3 weight classes in that span. 145, 135, 125, and 115. There are now 4 women's MMA weight classes. And you can attribute that to Ronda, because before that, Dana White had virtually no interest in bringing women into the sport of MMA, into the Ultimate Fighting Championship organization. He said, no way. Even with successes like Cyborg, even with successes like Gina Carano, even with successes like Juliana Budd, and fighters that have been around for a long time, Kat Zingano, Miesha Tate, Holly Holm. Without Ronda, she opened the doors for that. And she'll always have that. I really think that this puts the WWE in a bad light, too, because it shows how desperate they are. It shows how desperate their product is. It shows that they have no draws, that they have to pluck draws from other things in order to get people to watch. And I think that that's sad. I really do. Vince developed Stone Cold. He developed The Rock. He developed all these talents, made them what they were. And I don't know, I don't want to say he's lost his touch, but this era of WWE wrestlers, men, women, whatever you want to call it, is just not the same. It's just not. I wish the best for her. I wish her all the best in the world, but when I read things, and I read an article by Ramona Shelburne, who is obviously a huge writer for ESPN and covers the NBA, long before she was an Olympian in the UFC, carry the mantle for women in combat sports and maybe everywhere. Maybe the pressure just got to her of carrying the sport of women's MMA. And she even alluded to in this article that now that women's MMA is as successful as it is, that other women are carrying that torch, she's okay. And she can move on in her career. I think we will see her again in the UFC one day. I've always said that. But she needed to change camps. And she belonged in the UFC. She doesn't belong in the WWE. She's not a good actress. I don't think she'll be that great on the mic. I think she'll have a lot of great high-flying judo moves. But I'm a little bit disappointed, because I think if she just would have changed camps, she could have been so much better than what she was. She ended her career. She chose to end her UFC mixed martial arts career on the note that it ended at, with 2 devastating losses via TKO to Holly Holm and to Amanda Nunes. And even the WWE can't change that. I'm Ryan Thomas. Take care, everybody.